Welcome everyone to Life Beyond 6 Feet. I'm Damien of RKB Paranormal. I'm joined by this week by my co-host Ted. He's part of our team. Ted, welcome joining in, man.
Nice to meet you.
This week we have Dr. Molnar. He's obviously a doctor by the name Dr. Don Molnar, and he's real big into the paranormal. Doctor, welcome to the show.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me.
So I'm just going to jump right into this. What really got you into the paranormal? What was your first experience that really got the clock ticking in your head that this could be something you'd be interested in?
So I've had stuff happen all my life from the time of childhood, a whole sort of different things. And then on top of having a lot of my own personal experiences, my family was real open to it. I'll talk about that a little bit too. But personally, I remember seeing things as a kid and then hearing things. One of the things I talk about is one of the earliest things I remember seeing is like a child-sized figure of light. It was just, the size of a kid, probably, like my height, but it was just all light, like a head, shoulders, arms. There wasn't any detail, like you couldn't see clothes or a face. It was just like this like light. It wasn't too bright, but you could tell it kind of glowed. And What I would see was it would peek around the corner. Like I'd be sitting in the kitchen talking to my mom, and I would see this kind of head kind of peek around the corner and go back. And I was like, what? And then every now and then I would see something run across our living room. And that went on for about a year or so. And I remember saying to my mom, I'm like, I'm seeing this child-sized light figure thing. And trying to think how old I was. I think I was probably kindergarten, first grade, thereabouts.
Okay.
And so I'd see that. My mom would go, my mom was like, would just roll with it. She was like, it's probably just her guardian angel. And we would talk about all that stuff and all that. So that kind of got it going for me. And then when I say, I'm with my family, my mom was real open to the idea of angels and religious stuff. She was raised Catholic and kind of try to get us to, be religious. And then my dad was more, he believed in God, but was more kind of, didn't really go to church, but he was really into the paranormal, like Bigfoot and UFOs and all that stuff. I grew up in Lorain, Ohio, right on Lake Erie. And Lake Erie, I don't know if you know, it's just notorious for UFOs and ghosts and Bigfoot up around Sandusky and Toledo and all that stuff. So it was just we always had this open forum in my home to talk about stuff. We'd always compare our stories and things like that. So, but my earliest thing was that child figure. The other thing I would hear sometimes is I'd hear my voice, I'd hear my name called out, like Don or Donald, and it sounded like it was real distant, but I'd be upstairs and my family or my mom and dad were downstairs, and I'd come running down, and thinking they called me, and they would look at me like I was crazy. They're like, what? I'm like, you guys didn't call me? I'm like, I clearly hear my name, like Donald, and so those were the kind of things I kind of had happen, as a child. And it's always kind of had spooky things. In my family, we always talked about it. And you want me to keep going on about kind of how, I got to where I'm at?
Keep going.
So all that stuff kind of kept going on even as I got older into teenage years. We used to think as a family that we would smell my grandfather as roses. My grandfather on my dad's side died right before I was born, and he was really into roses. Like he grew this rose bush and was all about roses. So we used to get these disembodied odors of roses out of nowhere. It was really strong, and it wasn't perfume. My mom didn't really wear perfume. We didn't have any deodorizers or anything like that. So we used to think as a family, as I was growing up, that it must be Grandpa's spirit visiting us, and that was the kind of family we had, And then one time, even I must have been about 12, 13, 14, somewhere around there. We even did a little mini seance. We were ghost hunting before there was ghost hunting, and we sat around the kitchen table. It was me and my two sisters, my mom and my dad, and we had the candle. That's all we had. We're like, Grandpa, if you're here, make that candle blow. And it didn't blow or anything, but it was interesting. And then throughout my life, I kind of had all these things happen. And then I went to medical school, and then got to being a doctor. And then I didn't realize you could investigate stuff. I don't know why I never really thought about it until I started seeing the shows like Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures, Most Haunted, all those shows.
Right.
So then I realized, oh my God, you can investigate these things. So I'd watch all the shows, and then I didn't start investigating until about 2011, 2012 when I moved to Virginia. and joined the team and all that kind of stuff. So I'll stop though, because there was a lot. I don't know if you have any questions or.
I think that's how a lot of people really got started. They were always into it, but didn't really realize that people had done that until the show started coming out. That's kind of how all of us were growing up. And phantom smells, that's a real interesting thing. I've smelled some stuff like that. Like a couple years ago, my aunt passed away, and she was a real heavy smoker, and so occasionally we'll get a real good whiff of smoke, and nobody in our house smokes.
Oh
And we'll
wow!
just be like, oh hey, I think Aunt Sharon's here with us, and
Yeah,
hearing and hearing your name called, even that as an adult. I mean, I've heard my name called as an adult, and it scared the hell out of me as an adult. So I can
yeah.
imagine hearing that as a child.
Well, and as a kid, I didn't know any better. And this was like back in the 70s. So I just went down thinking my dad called me.
Yeah,
And and even, I remember I asked my mom recently. My dad's passed away, and I'll tell you about that because when you mentioned the cigarette smoke. But let me backtrack. I remember I asked my mom recently. I'm like, Mom, do you remember I would hear my name called? She's like, Yeah. She goes, We don't know, we don't know what you were hearing. And but it was clearly like you sound like a male's voice. But it was the interesting thing about it now is that being a ghost hunter and doing this paranormal stuff is it was like this real distant. It was like something from almost like another realm, I guess. It was like Donald,
right.
but it was clearer. I was like, it was enough to get my attention, but it was like distant enough that it's curious to think about now.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, but jumping to the cigarette smoke. So yes, my dad smoked all the time too, and he actually ended up dying from a big heart attack like in '94.
Oh,
But he used to smoke, and it hasn't happened lately. But like the first 5, 6 years after he passed, I would smell the same thing. I've never been a smoker. I have a cigar occasionally, but never cigarettes. And
right.
but yeah, I would smell he smoked L&M cigarettes. I don't know if you're heard
Yeah.
of L&M's.
Yeah.
That's what he would smoke, and it had a particular smell to it when it lit up, like when you first light it up. Because I remember as a kid, I liked the smell of it, and every now and then, and right after he died, those first 5, 6 years, I would get that whiff of that smell, and I was like, "Holy cow!" And the other thing I would get is from him, or I think was him, was his clothes had a way of smelling, like it had a bad smell. It's the only way I could think to tell you, like, it wasn't a bad smell, but it was like I don't know if it was the detergent or what, but I would get that smell too. Like I'd be driving in my car and all of a sudden it would smell like Dad's in the car with me.
Yeah,
It was the craziest thing. But it would go
right.
like it was fast. It was like it was there maybe for a second or two, and then it was gone.
Right. It always makes me wonder if it's really them stopping by for a quick visit, or if something you see or hear something that just kind of triggers, and all of a sudden you just randomly smell that smell. That's something I've always wondered about phantom smells.
Yeah. Or is it a memory? But I know like for the rose smell, I never had met my grandfather, and I never really was real familiar with rose smells. But when we were growing up, it would be intense because even my mom would be like, "Yeah, I'm smelling roses." Oh yeah, I'm smelling roses too, And so this phantom rose smell that we would get was, I mean, it would come and go, and it seemed like it happened often. Sometimes more around like holidays or anniversaries. So it's kind of like maybe if it was my grandfather's spirit and he was visiting us. But yeah, the smell was pretty convincing and all that kind of thing. So
going through medical school, did you still kind of have all these different, I wouldn't say experiences more or per se, but like questions in your head, or were you just more focused on medical school, but still kind of had the paranormal like in the back of your head?
I always had it in the back of my head because, like I said, even to this, even till recently, I mean, I still have weird stuff happen. In medical school, I had an interesting thing happen. It's interesting now. I wish that it's funny when I look back through time, kind of getting off on a tangent. I wish I would have been a ghost hunter like a lot sooner, because there were so many experiences I had that I could have really investigated, like intensely. But I started medical school. It was my first year. Your first year of medical school, like the first day or so, you go down to gross anatomy, you start working on the cadavers. And it's because they're trying to, the first 2 years is all your book stuff, and the second 2 years is you're taking the book stuff, but you're doing clinicals, you're out in the hospitals learning stuff. But so I was down in the gross anatomy lab. So there was gross anatomy lecture, and then there was the lab. The lab is where you did the dissecting and all that stuff. And it was open 24 hours a day, so you could study whenever you wanted to. So you can go down there in the evening, you can go down there whenever you wanted to, to work on stuff. And I decided one night to go down there. A test was coming up, so I'm like, I'm gonna go down and just by myself and just do a session down here and do work on some anatomy. So I got down there and I got set up, and each cadaver was kind of like it was like a stainless steel coffin kind of on wheels. You had to
Mhm.
opened the two doors opened up, and then the body you could raise up with like a crank kind of thing. And then there was like there was like cubbies. So there was like a cubby with a body, a cubby with a body, and each cubby kind of, you can do like 4 or 5 people in the cubby. And I went down to work, and all of a sudden I heard this bang. It was a couple cubbies down, and there wasn't anybody down there with me. I was like, what the heck? I kind of blew it off. I was like, man, I'm just, maybe something settling. So then I started going about my business, getting ready to work on the cadaver, and bang again. I was like,
Oh,
whoa. I actually left at that point. I was like, it was
That's what I would have done.
yeah, it was convincing enough, and I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't into it as like I am now. It was convincing enough that I'm getting the heck out of here. And
right.
but yeah, there was definitely some loud bangs that were unexplained, and that was one of my first year of medical school. But then throughout the years, just kind of everything, it kind of kept happening. It happened in college when I was an undergraduate. I lived in this house. I don't think I've ever told anybody this before. I lived in a house in undergraduate before I went to medical school, and it was an older house in Akron, Ohio, and it had a servant stairs and it had the main stairs. It was like this old house, and we think there might have been servants that lived in the basement. Anyways, all the guys, there were 6 of us living in this house. They all had went home for Christmas, I think it was. I decided to stay a little bit longer by myself. So I stayed there, and my room was on the 2nd floor, and then there was a 3rd floor above us. But I'm not grabbing you that I would swear somebody came up the servant stairs, because the servant stairs were like, they'd be right. I could hear, they're like attached to the wall on the other side for where my room was. So I could hear somebody come up the stairs, and it would sound like boom, 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 boom. In fact, I remember I had a baseball bat and I was ready to like fight. Broke in the house.
Right.
I was like, what in the hell? So I go out there and I look, and there's nobody there. So
Oh,
it was
man.
crazy. And then so that happened. And then like the next night, there was 2 big rooms above us, 2 big bedrooms above us, 4 bedrooms and a bathroom on the 2nd floor. The room above me, it sounded like somebody was walking around and jumping around up there. And I thought somebody broke in again, because we had those fire escapes on the back of the house that you can go upstairs. Like they were
Right.
nice ones, because previous to that, somebody had died in a fire. So the university got real strict about making sure there was the right fire escapes. Anyways, went up there and there was nothing, but I swear to you, man, it wasn't like I think I heard a noise. It was like boom, 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 boom.
Right.
I'm like,
Oh,
and I took my bag again. I thought for sure somebody broke in the house. And then, so all that stuff happened to me. So one night, all of us were sitting around the house, me and the 6 guys and the other guys, and they're like, one of the guys brings up, he goes, hey, because that was the other night, I thought somebody broke in the house. and this was a different night than my nights. And he started explaining all these things. I'm like, dude, I've been hearing that same stuff. So it was cool that, it was cool the experiences I had, but then to have somebody independently validate and have
right.
separate experiences. So that house was like, I don't know what was there or what happened, but it was crazy.
It seems that Ohio in as a whole is a very haunted state.
It is. And Bigfoot too,
right.
man.
Because we're from Tennessee, and
Okay.
Tennessee's a very haunted state too.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
and we have some crazy shit that goes on just heck where I live right now. So,
What kind of stuff happens around you guys?
like where I live, we just live in an old trailer, and we'll be laying in bed at night, and me and my wife will hear people walking through the hallway,
Oh,
and we'll
really?
check our cameras, make sure none of the kids are up, all the kids are sound asleep. We'll hear knocking on the wall in the bathroom. Again, we'll
Wow.
check, and all the kids will be asleep. We've had stuff knocked off our wall. I actually seen it. We had a hat sitting on our kitchen counter, got knocked off and went flying. I don't know,
No.
probably 3 feet off the counter. And I'm a real big debunker. I try to think of a logical explanation before I just say, okay, that's paranormal. So when I seen this hat go off the counter, like I said, it's an older trailer, so our kitchen counter is kind of slanted a little bit. And I was like, well, maybe this hat was just kind of sitting on the very edge and was just slowly sliding off.
Yeah.
And so I put it on the edge of the counter and just slowly pushed it off, and it fell straight down. I was like, well, that's not where it landed. Put it back in the counter, just kind of gave it a little pop, and it went flying and landed right about in the same spot. And
Wow.
it's pretty wild. And we've heard something pound on our back door.
Oh, wow.
Of course, I jump up thinking there's some kid outside messing around,
Yeah, yeah.
and I look out the back window. I don't see nobody, and like as soon as I sit down, two more knocks. I was like, "There's somebody, outside fucking with us." And so
Yeah,
I
yeah.
jump up and I run outside, and I'm looking around. There's nobody out there, and
Wow.
that one was pretty. That was pretty wild. So, but yeah,
That's
we
pretty, that's pretty good. Now,
it,
do you do investigations too? Do you guys investigate and all that, or?
we do.
Cool.
Ted's our newest member, and he just went on his first investigation with us
Oh,
about. I guess it was
cool.
probably about 2-3 weeks ago
Around it.
now, and
Yeah.
and he had the hell spooked out of him a couple of times.
Oh, wow. Where'd you guys go for that?
We went up to a little bed and breakfast up in Paducah, Kentucky, called the
Wow.
Hotel Metropolitan. It was a super active night, but it was a very fun night.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Well, it's funny you said. I remember my first investigation I did with a team. We went up to Hillview Manor in Newcastle.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you ever been there. That place, it blew me away, man. I was like, I remember the REM pod going off for the first time and unexplained. It went off unexplained, and it just,
Mhm.
I was hooked from the get go. And
Right.
I saw an unexplained mist go across the floor. Me and this other guy independently saw it together, and shadow figures, and something growled at us. We were cleaning up there, and something growled at us. We were cleaning up down by this boiler room, and it was crazy. But I remember it's like it always sticks with me. My first big investigation.
Right.
Right.
So
Yeah. Especially when some crazy stuff happens. That's always going to stick with you.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so when you do your investigations, do you typically try to stick to like the bigger, like well-known places, or do you do private residences, or how do you normally go about your investigations?
So me personally, I'm open to doing privates. I haven't had a chance. I've been doing I've been helping out a lot of different. I work or helping or working with a lot of different teams. I end up doing a lot of like public investigations.
Hmm.
Small places, big places. One of the teams I work with, Spirit Guides, we went up to Crescent Penitentiary or Sanitarium up in Pennsylvania.
Uh-huh.
So I do a mix. I've been to Hinsdale a couple times.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that's pretty
I've heard
cool.
Hinsdale's pretty wild. So
Yeah, it's a cool place. I've been there twice. Been there twice. We didn't. I mean, it wasn't off the walls. The first time I went there with my team, Spirit Guides team. We had some different stuff with like the touch activated cat toys, and
right.
the static periscopes and all that. I went back a second time with a group of science guys. We were doing this right. We're doing a book project on the Hinsdale house, and we set up. Really didn't do any of the like usual ghost stuff. We did a lot of scientific equipment stuff, and we had a little bit of interesting things happen, but not over the top. But it's still cool. I think it's a cool place. It seems like there's
Right.
potential for a lot of stuff to happen. But I do then yeah. So I've been mostly working with a lot of different teams, helping out with public events. My very first thing I did is when I branched. So I belonged to a team called Twisted Paranormal,
Hmm.
and then I branched off and did Haunted M.D. around 2018, 2019. And the very first thing I did with my girlfriend was we did a private investigation for a friend at work. So that was kind of cool. And I'm actually looking. I got a couple of people that want me to come do some small privates. I do the private ones I kind of do they have to be small because it's usually me and my girlfriend.
Right.
So I kind of keep those pretty small. But there's a couple of places I was thinking about doing, and then yes, I do a mix. Most right now, it's mostly been working with other teams, and we do a variety of places. Like I'm doing October 15th, I'm doing this place called Miller Kite up in Elkton, Virginia. It was Stonewall Jackson's headquarters for like a few weeks.
Oh wow.
Yeah, before he started the Valley campaign, and then the people that owned the house, the Miller Kites, they were actually fought for the Confederates, and I think one or two of their sons died.
Hmm.
So we get a ton of activity. So it's a nice size house from the Civil War time. It's been restored and all that, like a historical museum. But it's we do that. It's like a decent house.
Right.
We do public events there. I've done some private ones there and get a lot of activity. So it just depends. I want to branch out and kind of do some stuff on my own. There's some things I want to try out and never get a chance. I have some different equipment I want to try and
Hmm.
some other techniques that you just can't really do it when you're doing public events or
Yeah.
sometimes
Yeah.
working with other teams. I want to kind of go and do some solo ones
Right.
at some of the better known places here that I've investigated, and I just want to kind of go in by myself and see what kind of experiences I have by myself if it goes along with what we experience as a group and things like that. So
Right. So what's been say your favorite well-known place you've investigated so far?
That's tough, man. There's been some good ones, man. Hillview Manor, that first one was amazing. I've been to Tala, Trans-Allegheny. It's really
Oh,
cool.
see that's at the top of my list right there.
You haven't been there yet?
Not yet.
Yeah, you gotta check it out. It's huge, man. It's expensive to go as a team, but if you go like during a public investigation, they let you have like a floor at a time.
Right.
That's what I did. I went with my team, but we did a public investigation, so they knew we were a team. So they would let us have a floor, and then you would do that for 45 minutes,
Right.
and then do another section. So you got
Yeah,
the
that's
Tally was pretty cool. I did the Battleship, North Carolina. That was really cool. Fort Mifflin.
oh
Fort
wow.
Mifflin's pretty cool. Yeah. And then,
Yeah.
in this place here, I was telling you, Elkton, it's like 35 minutes from here. It's always active. It just blows my mind. And then we got a place that's also close here to Charlottesville. It's called Swananoa.
Mhm.
They really don't let people ghost hunt too much, but they let me tag along with the team that does public investigations for them. It's this huge like marble mansion this guy built for his wife. Like he started building it like in 1902 and all that stuff, but it's on top of this mountain, and some of it's in pretty good shape and some of it's not in good shape. But that place is really neat. It's one of my fun local places because every time we go there, we get stuff. And
Right.
one of the guy who built it, his name was Mr. Dooley, and it seems like him and I always bond. Like every time we go there and I start talking about Mr. Dooley, you start getting equipment going off, or you get this or you get that. So
That's pretty cool. And the way you say they do it at Trans-Allegheny, that's kind of how they do it at Waverly Hills too when they do a public event.
yeah, I've never been. I want to go. I've never been to Waverly. Have you been there?
I've been there 3 times.
I haven't, but he has.
I went there before we actually started our team, but I went about 3 times in like 13 months, and
Wow. Is it pretty active?
I experienced different stuff every time I went. From hearing disembodied screams to felt like something was stabbing me in my stomach during one investigation. It's a pretty active place. That's a place that once all the drama they have going on right now kind of gets settled down, that's a place I want my team to go.
Yeah, I'd love to go there. That's one of my bucket list ones.
Yeah.
I'd love to go there. Yeah.
So you mentioned a few minutes ago the cat balls. That is one of probably the most convincing pieces of equipment that I've ever used, and it's crazy because it was made for cats.
Yeah.
And you could have these things sitting in the middle of a room, nobody around. You could be outside and just have your camera going, and you see these things going crazy, and there's nobody in there. And so that's probably one of our best pieces of equipment that we have, and one of our cheapest pieces as well. So do you use those a lot?
I do, and for the exact reason you're saying is that something's got to touch those things, right? Something's got to physically interact with those, and I haven't found anything so far that sets them off. In fact, I have a EDI logger and it has the vibration sensor, and I've kind of compared them, and it's you got to something really has to stimulate those things to go off. And I've had them like when I'm at home here. And I'm just curious. I'll just set them out and let them sit there, and so they don't go off.
Right.
So I'm like, if it was like, well, they kind of randomly go off, and there's no rhyme or reason, it should happen all the time. So I often set them up here in the house, and they never go off. Then you take them to a place that potentially has activity, and they go off. Or even where one area where I used to work, used to get them going off all the time. And yeah, they're cheap, and to me, it carries a lot of weight, especially when you say touch it again, or you start getting back and forth. I've had them where you get like 4 or 5 answers back and forth.
Right.
So it's like not just, it's hard to say that's some kind of random thing going on.
Right.
They're one of my favorite things too.
We had some good look out of them. Not our past investigation, but one we had before. We was at an old jail. It was one of those old jails where like the jailer and his family would live like on one side, and they'd have the actual jail on the other side, and we was up in what was supposed to be the children's room, and as soon as we set them in the floor, these things just started going nuts. And they kind of told us beforehand, hey, we get a lot of cat ball activity in the children's room, and they weren't lying. Like they would start going and they would stop, and when they were going off, we were using our SLS and it was mapping in like what looked like a little kid sitting on the
Oh,
floor,
really?
like playing
That's
with them.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And
cool.
when we would say when it would stop, we would say, you can touch them again, and then it would look like it would lay on the ground like it was throwing a temper tantrum, like it didn't want to be told what to do, and
Oh,
it
wow.
was pretty cool. And we had went to the room across the hall and just left all that sitting up there, and they were still going off with us in another room. And so
Wow.
those things are pretty neat.
I think there's something to it. Now I got some scientific buddies. They poo poo it, but I don't know. To me, I know it's hard to talk about it scientifically, but something's interacting with those balls. And because I even had
Yeah.
another guy, we used one over at Hinsdale when I went with the science guys, and he's like, "Well, the vibration," and I'm like, "Dude," because we had him sit on a chair, and there was an EDI logger real close by. I'm like, "Look at those cat balls are going off, and that logger, the vibration sensor did not go off, and the vibration sensor on the logger it's more sensitive than the balls.
Right.
Like, if there was vibration sending those balls off, the logger should have been going off, because he's like, well, we're walking around, and I'm like telling you, I'm like, dude, it's not the vibration,
Right.
and even and so yeah, I love the cat toys. I love the SLS camera. Lately, it's been getting a lot of people have been dissing on it and thinking it's nothing. But to me, I think with the SLS cameras, you gotta know how to use them and what's if it's false mapping or not. And but I've had instances too like that with the SLS, not with the cat toys, but with like a an EMF meter or a REM pod where you're catching a figure on the SLS that looks like it's in free space, and you say, can you touch the K2 meter or can you touch the REM? And I had them go off. To
Right.
me, when you get that kind of validation, I don't know how. I mean, it's you got you got to be pretty skeptical to argue that away.
Right.
And so
We had a pretty cool interaction with the SLS up at the Hotel Metropolitan, didn't we, Ted?
Yes, sir.
oh wow, what'd you guys
It
get?
was with this hotel. It was built back in I think 1909 by African American lady, strictly for African American people during that time.
Oh wow, okay.
And so she built it, because everything was segregated back then. So she wanted something strictly for African Americans, just a place for them. And she ended up getting like a lot of well-known musicians and celebrities that would come in there and stay, like BB King, Ray Charles,
Wow.
people like that. And so
Yeah.
we're downstairs, and I'm like, hey, it's nothing's really happening yet. It's going kind of slow. I was like, let's play some music. And so I get on my phone and I turn on a BB King song. The song turns on and it maps in a tall figure and a small figure. And I shit
way.
you not, you can ask Ted, it looked like they were dancing to the music.
No way.
It looked like the
And
tall
little
one.
kid was tapping its feet.
Yeah,
Wow.
it was. And
I believe it, man.
And what's real cool about it is when that song stopped, they disappeared.
No way. That's cool. Yeah, I think that sounds legit, man.
And so then I was like, well, let's play a more upbeat song. So we turned on a Ray Charles song. As soon as that song starts, they both map back in the same exact spot.
No way.
And they stand there and they dance the entire song. The song stops, they disappear.
That's cool, man. That's good evidence.
It was pretty neat to witness.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that. We at this Elkton, Miller Kite in Elkton, Virginia here, the Civil War place, Stonewall Jackson's. We had something similar happen. Every time we go there, we end up mapping a stick figure on this couch, and you always kind of question if it's mapping the couch or not, but it often looks like it's sitting there and it looks like it doesn't match up to the couch. So one time we decided to go ahead and play some music. We played Dixie, Wish You Were in Dixie.
Right.
And the figure stood up and it started moving his legs, kind of like what you're talking.
Oh, wow.
And we were shocked. I'll forget that video somewhere, but yeah, it was. I was shocked. I was blown away because I always try to, like you, I try to debunk it and try to make sure I'm not making something out of nothing. But yeah, it stood up, started dancing on the floor. It was the craziest thing.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. So, what's some of the other equipment you like to use other than the cat toys?
So yeah, the cat toys. I like the SLS. I know people kind of poop on me about that, but I like the REM pods. Probably one of my favorite things now is I wear body cameras. Actually, I got one right here. It's one of these body cams.
Okay.
Yeah, I usually wear one as soon as I get there, to just start recording because so often things happen when you're setting up and all that kind of stuff. So the body cams are nice because they kind of shoot a wide angle and they get really good sound. I've caught really good EVPs on the body cams, and I also bought a bunch of them to use as stationary cameras, so you can kind of just put them on a tripod and set them up like if there's a hot spot as you're walking around.
Right.
So I love the body cams. In fact, I very rarely do I use a digital recorder anymore. I kind of end up catching a lot on the body cams, but I like EVPs were my favorite thing. So, some kind of recording, either the body cams or I use the Olympus digital recorders, SLS camera cat balls. I like the EDI data loggers because you have all, you have all 5 things, and then also you can put the SD card in there if you want, and you can, if you're going to try to do that kind of thing. And then, I got some new stuff lately. I got actually one sitting right here. This is I didn't take it off. This is a footstep sensor.
Okay.
Yeah, you turn it on and then when it's like a vibration sensor pretty much, so you can tell if there's like footsteps, and you can set the sensitivity for it, so real light or not. If so if there's like a claim of footsteps and all that, then you can have that set up. I like I've been using the have you seen the chain of lights, the EMF chain of lights?
Yeah.
Chain of lights. I can't think what it's called. But I like those. Those are pretty nice. I got a couple of those, small ones of those. Those are kind of cool because you can kind of see it move up and down, or get some pretty good interaction on that. So it just depends. But probably, I mean, if I only had to have one thing, I probably would have the good body camera, because you're getting the video and the audio kind of thing.
Yeah, I'd never even thought about getting something like that. And actually, 2 of our team members work in corrections, and I never even thought about that.
Yeah, they're nice because, like with this one, for example, I just like if I was going to investigate tonight, I just take it and clip it on my shirt. You can buy a holder for them. They have holders and things, or something around your neck. I just put it right there and go.
Right.
And this particular one's a full spectrum one, but and it has the little screen on the back. I don't know if you can see that or not.
Yeah.
And then the other ones I have, that's the only full spectrum I have. The other ones are regular vision, and they have IR mode.
It's definitely a good point of view camera too, and that way, like you said, if keep it rolling at all times. So if like you're just kind of in between rooms or whatever, like switching locations, you still be recording at all times. So that's something we're gonna have to look into, Ted.
Yeah, I think it's worthwhile, man. It's worthwhile to have them because like you just never know when you're. I don't know how many times before I had these body cameras, you're setting up and like, oh, I wish I was recording now,
right?
That kind of thing. So
that's happened to us a few times. We'll just be getting ready, or just not even really set up, just kind of unloading equipment, chatting and stuff, and you start hearing stuff behind you going on, or up top happening above you, and yeah, definitely something we're gonna have to look into now.
Yeah, door open on you and all that.
Yeah, see, if you would have had that, Ted, at the Hotel Metro, we would have caught that door opening by itself.
Yeah, there you go, man. Yeah. The other thing I like too is I like the motion sensors. I have I don't have it sitting out here, but I have it's like a 360 motion sensor. Those are nice because it's kind of like the idea with a cat toy. Something has to like physically interact with it, so kind of it has to sense movement. So when that goes off, I always get real excited. So I like the motion sensors and pretty much everything else I said.
Right. But yeah, like we'll have to look into those body cams, because they would have came in really handy whenever Ted seen that door open. Ted, tell him about that door, man.
Man, we just got done our first little session and taking a break and everything. So I go into this kitchen. And so like whenever you go in that little hallway, there's like to the left, it was like a storage room or something like that, wasn't it? And then like right, like you walk down just a little bit, then over to your left, there was like a little bathroom, and there was like a little door there and everything. So I'm in there, I'm getting a drink. I wasn't even thinking about nothing. And I walked by it, and as soon as I walked by it, the door opened, and I'm about to jump out of my pants.
Wow, that's cool, man.
But the adrenaline, though, I mean, I wasn't really scared per se, but it was more of an adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
And it was just like, dude, that just happened to me.
And then,
that's cool, man. That's cool. Yeah, it's shocking when you like actually have like real experiences like that, for especially your first time or whatever. And you're just like, what could really happen,
And then
And it didn't
but
happen one time. It happened like 3 times.
yeah,
And all the
and
times I didn't have a camera.
That's
And-
pretty cool, man. That's really
and-
cool.
and
Right.
that last time it happened on command when he asked it to open it one more
Yeah.
time.
No way.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
wow. That's
and
good
oh,
That was
stuff.
the coolest.
That's really good
Right.
stuff. That sounds like a really cool place.
Oh, it was happening. It was happening all night.
Did you
So
figure
about
out, like,
2.
sorry, did you figure out who was opening the door? Could you get any, like, any
see,
clues?
what had happened is the night before, me and my wife had just went up there because we just wanted to kind of have a night to ourselves. So we was up there the night before, just me and her. And when we got there, the owner was kind of giving us a walkthrough. And when we walked into that same kitchen, that door opened right in front of the owner.
Oh, wow.
And she was like, she kind of spooked her a little bit. She goes, I'm never in here at night, but I'm never in here at night. She goes, because stuff like this, she goes, I'm cool with it, but at the same time, it still bothers me a little bit. And so whenever she left, the first thing I did, I went back to that door trying to figure out why it opened. I'm jumping up and down in front of this door and I'm pounding on the wall, just anything I can do to get this door to open. It never moves.
Wow.
And so, the next night it happens to Ted 2 or 3 times. And when it happened the last time, I'd done started filming again, and I was walking down the hallway, and I thought I heard Ted coming around. I thought I heard him say something, like he was kind of in front of me. And I turn around and he's not there, so I keep walking, and I hear like this clicking sound by this door that I walk by. And then right after that, you hear Ted say, "Can you open that door?" And we hear the clicking of the door, and that's when I turn around trying to get over there, and he's coming out of the kitchen with his eyes all wide and kind of he was like, "Holy shit, man." He's like, "That just happened again." And we stood in that kitchen after that for probably 20 minutes just filming this door, trying to get it to open one more time so we could capture it. And of course it never did. And we found out the next morning when the owner came back, she was like, "How'd your night go? You have anything happen?" And we told her about the door again, and she goes, "I forgot to mention the other night that at some point this guy had murdered his brother in that kitchen."
Oh,
And so we didn't know that until that following morning. So
yeah.
I was like, well, that it kind of coincides with the door opening and some of the stuff we were getting when we were doing the Estes method. So
Wow.
it all kind of added up there the next morning, and we didn't know what was going on.
Yeah, that's great experiences, man, to have that kind of stuff happen, especially for Ted's first time out, man.
Yeah,
That's pretty, that's like
it
good
was
stuff
really
because that's kind of stuff you want to happen. And
right.
yeah, so
Right.
much, man. That's cool.
So how many different hospitals have you worked in?
So that's a good question. So so I did all my training in Ohio. So I worked before I got to medical school, I worked at Akron General Medical Center. And then I did all my training pretty much at Akron General and Akron City. Akron City and Akron General was the main hospitals where I did my medical school stuff and my residency. And then I worked after I finished residency and got out. I worked down in Worcester Hospital, Worcester, Ohio. And then from Worcester, I moved down to Charlottesville, where I worked at a place called Augusta Health. It was a hospital, and that's actually where I ended up hearing about the team that I joined. I can tell you that story here in a minute. And then now I work for UVA now. Although I don't mention that too much because UVA is kind of funny about the ghost hunting stuff. So don't mention that too much, but just so you know, yeah, I work at UVA now.
Right.
But the Augusta Health thing, so I moved to Fishersville, or I had moved to Charlottesville in 2009. My ex-wife had moved down here with my son, and my son was like 8, 9 years old, and it was just so hard to be away. I tried for 2 or 3 years to, go back and forth, and I'd have him in the summer, and he'd have to go back home for the, school year, and it was so hard to be away from him. So I moved to Charlottesville because that's where my ex-wife was living at the time, and I ended up working at Augusta Health. Then I hadn't started ghost hunting yet, but I was interested in it. And I was working night shift at Augusta Health in Fishersville, and one of the nurses came back. It was night shift, and she was talking about that she had just came back from St. Albans in Radford investigating with the team. And I'm like, what? I'm like, how'd you go to St. How'd you go down there and which team? And no. And she's like, well, there's this team here in Fishersville called Twisted Paranormal Society. and they're actually looking for people. So I met Tana and Lyle, who are the founders of it, and joined them. I joined them. That was like 2012, I think, and that's kind of who I went to Hillview Manor with, and I was with them for a while. But anyways, yeah. So hospital wise, those were the hospitals I worked at so far, the ones I told you already. But
All right. Now, out of all those hospitals, what would probably be the most haunted one you worked at?
yeah, that's a good question, man. So where I work now, we're actually in the main hospital now, but for the longest time, from 2014 till this year, we were in a separate hospital. It was in Charlottesville, but it's a satellite about 3 or 4 miles away from the main hospital. And this is actually where, if you saw some of my videos, I've posted some videos for catching some evidence there.
Mm-hmm.
But this satellite little building had tons of activity, even though it was built like in 2011. Tons of stuff like so I'm a hospital-based doctor. I don't do any outpatient stuff. It's all inpatient. So our office, when I say our office, it's like kind of where the doctors congregate. We sit down, do our work on the computers. And in this particular building, we had like a little TV set, and there was sleeping areas that had bathrooms attached with showers and all that kind of stuff. But that, like, our office area was this crazy active. Like, we had these motion activated lights that would come on all the time. You would hear sounds like people were in the other room. You couldn't see them. You'd hear typing on the computers in the other room around the corner, and there's nobody there. And all the doctors that worked over there were like, this place has got to have a ghost in it because of all the stuff that happens. So amazingly, even though the building was built in 2011, tons of activity. And I started doing some research. I think the land that it was built on was part of an old plantation. There was a plantation called Farmington Plantation. It was this huge, and they had all kinds of slaves, and it dated back to like 1700, all that kind of thing, like a kind of a colonial. And then also the land itself, it was actually a thoroughfare. It was like a kind of a way for the Native Americans to go back and forth, and stuff like that. And then there's actually train tracks that were right behind our building too. So between the train tracks and the history and the fact that we were a hospital and people dying there, it just seemed like all the huge setup for all this activity.
Right.
It was crazy. Everybody had a story. Even the other day, we moved into the main hospital now, but we were still talking about our ghost experiences at the other place.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So what's some of the crazy stuff you've experienced while you've been in hospitals?
So
Because hospitals in general are just creepy to a lot of people, and so I've never really experienced anything at a hospital, but I've never really been at one, when there's not a ton of people in the building either. So what's some of the wild stories you got from working in all these different hospitals?
Yeah, I mean, so the place I was just telling you about, we had tons of stuff there with all that stuff happening in the office. I had somebody knock on the door, and I went to, it kind of reminded me what you're saying about your trailer. Knock on the door, open the door right away, and there's nobody there. And that would happen a couple of times. And then I actually saw a lady standing down on the patient floor. All the patients were on one floor, and our office was up on another floor. But in one of the areas, there was a drink room, where we had like a soda machine and food for the patients, all that kind of junk.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of walked by the room, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw like a lady with brown hair standing facing the soda machine. And it caught me off guard. I was like, she just didn't seem like she belonged there. So I was like, wait a minute. So I took a step or two past the door, and then I backed up, and she wasn't there. But I knew I'd seen her. And this is a cool story, because the other day, a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to the nurses now that we're at the main hospital, and one of the nurses had a similar experience, and I didn't know about it, and she didn't know about mine. She's like, yeah, I was in that room, the drink room there, and I thought I saw a lady go past the door in the hallway. And I go with, and she said her lady had brown hair too, and stuff. So it was weird. I think we were seeing a similar apparition in the same area,
right?
So that kind of stuff. And you'd hear disembodied voices and things like that. And then even the maintenance guys at that place I'm telling you about, they would see stuff too. And I'm trying to think, like, where I work now in the main hospital, like today, for example, I was walking out. It's a long walk to get to the car. It's a long walk. It's, we park way out. Like, it's probably like a half a mile to get to the car. You walk through a lot of buildings and then outside. But today I was walking down this hallway. I was the only one in there, this real long hallway. It's kind of like one of those movies, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would swear I hear footsteps behind me, because I'm like walking and I'm like, And I even looked up in one of those, those mirrors, those hats.
Right.
You can see somebody come around the corner. I looked up and there was nobody there. So I started walking again. And it sounded like somebody was walking behind me.
Oh.
So I stopped and I looked back. I almost started recording because I was starting to click into investigator mode. I was going to have my cell phone, like hold my cell phone up and let it record and see if I catch anything. But that happened today, like around 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock walking out. So and then the hospital now where I'm at, there's an older part that dates back to like probably early 1800s. And that part, you definitely get the vibes. Like when you walk through the old part of that, it's just offices, but it's like low ceilings and the old bricks and all that. You definitely get the creeps. And I'm not like a psychic kind of person, but I walk through there and you can definitely you start looking around. You're like, you're like, man, I wish I could investigate down here, but you get in trouble. But yeah, so there's all these creepy feelings, and people have seen stuff walking on the different units, and usually the nurses have a lot of cool stories and stuff like that. So.
Oh, I'm sure. And I like how you're always like in investigator mode, even when you're at work. So
yeah,
that's kind of how I am. Like whether I'm at work or at my grandmother's house, like I'm always in investigative mode, even when I probably shouldn't be. So
well, even in like this is my work bag. This is my work bag right here. In my work bag, let me show you what I got. I carry them with me all the time. I got I got cat toys.
There you go.
Because sometimes there's time where you have downtime where you may be the only doctor in an area where you're doing your notes. We do all our stuff in the computer. So if I'm by myself, I just pop these out, sit them over there, and I just say, "Hey, if anybody's here with me, give me a sign."
Right there you go. Yeah. Where I work at, I'm a manager at a store here where I work at, and we have stuff that happens at our store occasionally, and all my employees want me to bring my stuff in, and I tell them, I was like, y'all are already kind of spooked to work at night. I was like, what if I come in here and I find something or get something on video? I was like, y'all are gonna want to work at night anymore. So I've been kind of hesitant about bringing it in, but I also want to because it's just some of the stuff that's happened while I've been there. So
yeah.
Ted, yeah, I know you got some good questions for the doc, man.
I just want to know if like any of your patients has like haunted you or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, do you have my patients had any like ghost experiences, or do they? Yeah, actually, it's interesting you say that. In our old building that we just moved from, I've had people tell me that they had like their lids. They would get their drinks and their food trays, and they would already had the lid like flip off of their drinks. In the rooms, there's in all the rooms there's sinks, and the sinks have paper towel dispensers, and those are motion activated. So I've had different patients tell me, yeah, I was sitting here and for no reason the paper towel dispenser just ran, so that would kind of freak them out. And then we had one room where it seemed to have a lot of activity. Like when the room was empty, the call bell would always kind of go off, or not always, but it would go off frequently with nobody in there. And then recently, before we left the building, one of the patients said he saw a guy standing in the corner, and it freaked him out. And he kept trying to kind of shake the cobwebs off. He's like, and then finally it just disappeared. But he kind of saw like this shadow type figure, in the room. And then I have had patients, like one of the things I'm interested in besides the ghost hunting is like near death experiences where people have left their bodies and come back, or I've had some patients that have had deathbed visions. As they're passing away, they'll see different things. But some patients will share like some people have had like small near death experiences. I had one guy who is he had a neck injury, so he's quadriplegic now. But he was telling me about he ended up being a quadriplegic because he had crashed his car. During the time when they were trying to get him out of the car, he actually was out of his body. He said, I was watching him do everything. He goes, they had to get the jaws of life, and they had to do this and had to do that. And he goes, I was watching him do all this stuff. He didn't do like the rest of the near death where you go see your life review. He was just out of his body for a while and then went back in. But when he told the paramedics, I guess the paramedics came by and seen him after, he was able to talk and stuff. And he started telling them about what he saw, and the paramedics were blown away because they're like, there's no way you could have known some of the stuff he knew. So
Right.
little stuff like that's kind of cool. So, but I've heard different stories like that. Some patients have told me about their ghost stories, and I actually have families who will come back and get in touch with me. One of the things I do as a doc, I'm a internal medicine.
Mm-hmm.
It's adult medicine, hospital based. So I take care of people from the age 18 to the time they pass away. So I end up doing a lot of end of life care, like, people we've done everything for and we can't get them better. So we make them comfort care and let them pass away in a hospital. And, we just make sure they have the medication so they're not suffering. So, I'll talk to families, if it comes up, I usually don't bring it up unless families bring it up, but we'll start talking about I'm a ghost hunter and I think there's an afterlife and, and stuff like that. And I've already had families get a hold of me on my Facebook or whatever and say, oh my God, Dr. Molnar, you won't believe the lights were coming on and the animals were acting crazy and all this stuff. And we're pretty sure it was mom or pretty sure it was dad. And, it's cool. You get that feedback from the families and stuff. So I get all
Right.
that, kind of, they call that like after death communication where people reach out and
Right.
yeah, it's cool. And, I think, in some instances from a helping people standpoint, I think being a doctor that can talk about that stuff, I think it helps people because, for the most part, I think there's an afterlife. So I'll tell people, I don't think this is the end. I think, we go somewhere else. And I think that helps people when they're dying
Mm-hmm.
to kind of feel like there's something beyond, beyond here. So,
Oh yeah, I'm sure it probably does comfort some of them. So what's some places, whether it be in America or across seas, wherever, that you eventually want to investigate? What's like on your bucket list?
oh yeah. I'd love to get to Waverly Hills, man, of course. And then it'd be cool to get out west a little bit. I haven't really investigated like out like is that the Washington Hotel out there, where Zach's been and all that, the
Mm-hmm.
Ghost Adventures guys. So it'd be cool to get out and do like places out there in California and Nevada, that kind of thing. Around here it'd be I'm trying to think. I've never been to the Mansfield place, even though I'm from Ohio. It'd be cool to go to the
Uh-huh.
Mansfield
Oh yeah.
Reformatory.
Yeah.
Yeah. St. Augustine in Florida, that'd be cool.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I remember that like I don't know if you guys seen that, if you remember that Ghost Hunters where they caught the shadow looking
Yeah,
over.
that was
Yeah.
that's pretty wild.
That was
That's
Yeah.
I think St. Augustine's probably on my top of my wife's bucket list. Not just for the paranormal part, but she just wants to go there just in general. And so what about any places in Tennessee? Is there any places in Tennessee you've investigated or want to investigate?
I haven't. I know there is Old South Pittsburgh. Is that down that way?
That's down near Chattanooga. It's
Yeah.
I've heard it's I've been there once, but it was during a public event, so I didn't really get to do much because there were so many people there. But actually the guy who owns that, he just recently bought another hospital in Tennessee, and he's opened it up for investigations. It's called Old Harriman Hospital in
Oh
Harriman,
wow.
Tennessee,
Oh
and
cool.
we actually investigated an old post office in that town last year, and it was a pretty wild night there. And I think the hospital is like right around the corner from it. So,
Oh wow.
and then you got of course you got Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary up in East Tennessee that's super active.
Oh wow. Yeah, I don't know a lot of places there, but I'm happy to I'll investigate anywhere really.
And the place we're going to next weekend, which myself and my co-founder went there last year. It'll be everybody else's first time there. We're going to back to the historic Scott County Jail in Huntsville, Tennessee, and it was a super active night for us there. And
Oh wow.
we we actually captured our most profound piece of evidence so far at that place. We captured a picture being knocked off the wall, and it did like a flip in midair and landed about 4 feet on the other side of the doorway.
Holy cow.
And when you slow this video down and you kind of brighten it up a little bit, you can notice like a white anomaly will come down and goes to the right. You see what looks like a shadow figure dart across the screen. And then when that picture gets knocked off, it looks like there's a hand that comes out from behind the wall and slaps that picture off the wall.
No way. That's
And
cool. That's really good, man.
I'll have to send you the video of that. It's pretty wild.
Yeah.
And right before that happened, we heard a woman from that same hallway saying help.
Oh wow.
And while this was happening, like our REM pod's going crazy, our EDI is fluctuating and going nuts, and then we hear this woman say help. And then I'll walk over to the hallway and open the door and say hello, and this picture gets slapped off the wall, and
That's good, man.
it
That's a lot
was
because you got so many different things going on to kind of validate it.
yeah,
Yeah.
just each one of those pieces that happened by themselves is a good piece of evidence. But we had, 5, 6 things there in like a 30, 45-second time frame that just made it a really good piece of evidence overall. And so much so that the ladies that oversee the jail and put on the investigations and everything, they've incorporated that video into their ghost tours, their ghost walks, and they show like other teams coming in. So it's a pretty happening place, and we're heading back there next weekend. So we're pretty excited.
Awesome, man. You have to
about
let
it.
me know what happens. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. I had something else I was going to say, and I just went blank right in the middle of it.
Hey, with your EDI loggers, do you notice, like, will you start seeing atmospheric changes on there before something happens, like barometric changes or temperature changes on your EDIs?
I don't actually have one. The night we were using one, one of the ladies let us use theirs because I didn't even know what one was until that night, and they were like, yeah. Check this out. This is how you use it. And what was really interesting about it when we used it that night, like I said, my co-founder, he's in corrections, and so he brought his handcuffs and stuff with him. And so when we was up in these cells, and we had it set up, and the temperature, we was in this room for maybe 10 minutes, and the temperature had stayed steady at about 67.9, something like that.
Mm.
And so he puts these handcuffs down in front of it, and he looks over a couple seconds later, and the temperature had dropped to 66.6.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, that's a little weird.
Yeah.
And it stayed that temperature until you picked the handcuffs back up, then the temperature went back up.
Oh, that's weird.
I was like, okay. I was like, that's a little strange. So I went downstairs. I was like, maybe this thing's just being weird. And so I go downstairs and I'm talking to the ladies. I was like, hey, has this thing ever read this temperature in the building? They're like, no, it's, never read the temperature in this building. And they was like, well, how long ago did that happen? And I was like, right before I came downstairs. And they're like, well, that's really weird because we were just looking up a story we just read on Facebook that had to do with the number 666.
Right.
And then we get that number upstairs, and there was a lot of different weird coincidences that happened through that entire night.
Yeah, that is interesting.
And it's a really fun place. And so if you ever get down to Tennessee, if I had to recommend a place in Tennessee, that would be the place I'd recommend.
Cool. Yeah, because I don't know a lot of places there, but yeah, that'd be cool. With the loggers, I've noticed like right before something will happen, like before you'll get an interaction with other equipment or before you hear a voice or whatever, you'll notice on the loggers there'll be like pressure change, either barometric pressure or humidity. And it's interesting. I probably need to pay more attention and kind of write it up and maybe do a thing on it. But it seems like before something is going to happen, there's atmospheric changes that happen before something paranormal happens.
Right.
And we notice, especially at Miller Kite House, where I'm with this in Elkton, it seems like barometric pressure changes and then something happens. The SLS shows something, or the REM pod goes off, or you hear footsteps or something like that. So it's interesting that there's that kind of thing that happens first with the atmospheric change. So
right. It's definitely a piece of equipment that I've been trying to get, and I can never find it online. Every time
they're hard to get. Yeah,
they really are, because all the different sites I've found them on, they're always out of stock on them. So I was like, eventually I'll come across one. So,
well, what happened is that the chips, the chips they use to make it, the computer chip, whatever it's in it, there's a shortage of those. That's what's been the problem, is they don't have enough chips to make the device.
Well, that explains a lot then.
Yeah.
So what all you got coming up? Any investigations you got coming up? Any conventions you're attending? What do you got going on the rest of the year?
So October, I got a few things. October 15th, I'm going to be up at Miller Kite in Elkton, Virginia with Lunar Paranormal. We're doing a public event. That's probably one of my favorite places locally besides Swannanoa. And then October 22nd, I'm working with Lunar Paranormal again. And we're going to do the first ghost walk in the town of Elkton. It's where the Miller Kite is, but it's actually, there's several of the buildings downtown have ghost stories. So we're going to go around and take people around as a public event. And then the grand finale is we get to investigate the City Hall building, which is it's an old house that was a doctor's house that dates back to the Civil War. So it's kind of like an old Civil War kind of mansion in downtown. So we're doing that on the 22nd. And then on October 30th, I'm working with Lunar Paranormal again. And we're going to do, we're actually doing a Halloween event at Swannanoa, which is my other kind of favorite place locally. And then after that, I'm kind of chilling out. I'm gonna probably I want to take some time and kind of see if I can maybe do some of my own stuff a little bit. I've been wanting to do like some solo investigations, like I was telling you earlier.
Mhm.
And then I got a couple private investigations people asked me about. So I'm gonna probably work on some of that stuff. And I don't have any big appearances right now. It's always funny, like I go into the new year, I'm like, I don't have anything on my schedule, but then it fills up, with different things.
Right.
So, but yeah, so I got all that, and then I got my medical boards. Every 10 years, we got to take our boards.
Mm-hmm.
It's you got to like recertify, and it's supposed to be everything we know. So I got to do that October 3rd. So all of this week coming up, I'm going to be studying my butt off so I can pass this test.
Right. Well, sounds like you got a pretty busy October, not just in the paranormal world. So
yeah.
So if people want to look you up online, how can they find you to kind of follow along with you?
Yeah, so on Facebook, I have my Haunted M.D. That's kind of like where I started with everything with Haunted M.D. It's Haunted with capital H, M.D. And then Instagram is Haunted with a small h, then a Haunted _ M.D. Then I have YouTube. YouTube is YouTube Don Molnar, Don Molnar Haunted M.D. So yeah. And I kind of been a little, I haven't been posting as much lately, but if you go back through especially the Facebook page, I try to post a lot of interesting stuff, like not just evidence, but like interesting paranormal things,
Right.
anything from like ghost stuff to parapsychology, sometimes brain stuff, like how our brains work with paranormal.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, so there's a lot of cool stuff. If people aren't familiar with the Haunted M.D. stuff on Facebook, it goes, it's like 2 or 3 years of good stuff on there. And so.
All right. Well, Dr. Molnar, I really appreciate you coming on. I really enjoyed this interview, and you have a lot of interesting stuff to talk about, and that makes for a really good interview.
Cool. Yeah, no, yeah, it was a good job. Good interview.
Like I said, I try to do these interviews not knowing anything about who I'm interviewing, because I like to learn as I'm doing the interview, and I think that kind of puts a new twist on some of these podcasts, the way they do things. So.
Oh yeah, no, that was good. I think we had a good flow of everything. Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, everybody, go look up Dr. Molnar on his Facebook, his Instagram, check out his YouTube. He's got some really interesting stuff on his Facebook. That's kind of where I found out about him as well. And for myself and for Ted, I want to thank you for coming on, and everybody, we'll catch you next time.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, buddy.